Our opponent previews are winding down for Indiana State football, which means fall camp is nearly here. It's time to take a look at our final two teams on the schedule. Western Illinois will be the finale this season in November, the Western Illinois Leathernecks. So let's catch up with the voice of the Leathernecks in Scott Kornberg, who right now is in the middle of baseball season in Myrtle Beach. Scott, I'm pretty sure you just got your feet kicked up on the beach right now, don't you?
Not quite, but I'm at a baseball field, so it's like kind of like the same thing for me, Luke. I miss you. I hope you're having a good summer so far.
Jared Elliott going to be replacing Charlie Fisher. Of course, Charlie Fisher left to go to Arizona State. How do the Leathernecks right now feel in this coaching transition, even though Jared Elliott is not completely unfamiliar due to already being on the staff?
Well, I think people are thrilled the way it went out. Charlie Fisher was extremely well liked, and when he took that job at Arizona State, people were happy for him. I mean, it's hard not to root for that guy. He's as good as they come, and he had talked about wanting to get back to a high level, and obviously there's a lot of good things about that job. It's a beautiful campus, beautiful area. You're in a big conference, new coaching staff, so you get to work with a guy who was in the NFL. People were thrilled for him. It wasn't like a animosity thing at all. And for the way it turned out that Jared Elliott just essentially becomes the head coach, people were just really excited because it kind of continues what Charlie Fisher was building. Obviously, Elliott was an offensive coordinator under Charlie Fisher. There's a little bit of a different look at the lower levels of the coaching staff, but overall, I mean, it's been a seamless transition is the words that a lot of people use, because it's similar philosophies. Obviously, Elliott really learned coaching through Charlie Fisher, and this is a guy who's very easygoing, has high expectations for sure, but he's worked with a lot of the guys very closely that figure to be a big part of this offense, and that's Sean McGuire, obviously, who's going to his final year at Western Illinois. So I think, all in all, you never want to lose a head coach, but the circumstances behind both those moves, people understand what Charlie Fisher did, and we're thankful for him coming in and stabilizing the program at a crazy time, and then on top of that, bringing them up into the top 10 in the FCS last year. And Jared Elliott was a huge part of that as an assistant, so it's hard to argue with the way anything turned out and the motivations for Charlie and for Jared to become a first-time head coach. He's certainly got the right temperament. He's a great guy, very family-oriented. The players love him. The coaches love him. The football operations people love him. It's hard to ask for somebody else you'd rather have as a head coach there.
I know really thinking of how coaches operate at ease is not really a phrase you normally describe many coaches, but knowing Sean McGuire is back and probably even throwing in another offensive weapon of Steve McShane, it's got to make this transition a little bit easier, doesn't it? Having so many, even though there's going to be pieces you got to replace, obviously, but those are two big pieces to have back.
Yeah, and Clint Rankovich, who I think is going to play a pretty big role this year, because they've got to replace a lot. They lost more than 20 seniors, and a lot of them were on the offensive line. They're going to lose 4 of their 5 linemen. Obviously, they lost Jalen Acklin, their top receiver. But you have your quarterback coming back. I mean, that's huge, because with the new offensive line, they're going to have to find somebody to go to receiver-wise, and that's going to be a big question mark kind of on what they do. But they've got the quarterback who can be mobile, who, if there is struggles with the offensive line, you could use him a lot of different ways. You can roll him out. You could use him, a little bit of option game. You can get him out of the pocket. He's so good on play action. He's just a guy who wants to learn and get better and better and better every day. He works his tail off. So I think for Coach Elliott, knowing that Sean is coming back is absolutely huge. You've got those 2 running backs who are very different styles, but 2 really good players back there, I think, will help. And they're hoping that maybe a Zeke LaShore, who now, believe it or not, will be a senior, that this is the time he could break out. And he showed signs of that 2 years ago. I think last year maybe didn't go as good as he would have liked, but he has a lot of ability, and this could be his time. If not, they've got some younger players they like a lot too, and that'll be a question mark. And obviously on defense, you don't have Brett Taylor coming back, but they have a lot of guys they do like Colin Saunders and Quentin Moon and that can maybe stay in Justin Fitzpatrick, and that can really stabilize losing one of the best players in recent memory at Western Illinois.
What are really the main areas of focus of intrigue for you? Of maybe it's not necessarily positions, but you look at those 2 or 3 things for this football team, and you can think those could be areas that could be a cause of concern, but also could be reasons why this Western Illinois football team could be pretty darn good this year.
I think offensive line is going to be huge because of the way they want to run their offense in the past. Is heavily predicated on being able to run the football and then using that for play action. And Sean is just so good at that facet of his game. So to be good at play action, as you know, you got to be able to run the ball. So I think offensive line is huge. They have to be able to protect Sean. In the games they lost last year, they had trouble doing that. North Dakota State, Weber State, Sean was under pressure the whole game. And obviously you're replacing a lot of that offensive line. That's going to be significant to me. And then I really think that the secondary is an area that a lot of people are overlooking. They got to replace a couple of different safeties. They had kind of had those issues several of the past years, not necessarily this past one, but they really struggled defending the deep ball in the past. And Justin Fitzpatrick had such a huge season last year, but they have so much else to replace. And they lost Tyron Holloway. They lost David Griffith. There's a lot of turnover in that back 4, and they figure to have a pretty good pass rush with Pete Swenson coming back and Colin Saunders. And I really do think Quinton Moon is going to help a lot in replacing Brett Taylor now that he's a senior and he's learned under Brett and he's thrived the last couple of years. But I do think that Brett masked a lot, and I do think that some of it was the back 7, and I think that's going to be a question mark is how they cover in that secondary because you don't have an all-world tackler that makes up for so much defensively, and it'll be interesting to see how they handle that without their defensive leader the last several years.
Still got a ways away from the finale against Western Illinois at the end of the 2018 season, but it's always a pleasure to catch up with the voice of the Western Illinois Leathernecks, Scott Kornberg. Scott, buddy, before I let you go, Dion Broomfield, Coach Broomy says he misses you.
Oh, I miss him too. He is the best. I can't wait to see him in November.
Scott, we miss you too. We can't wait to see you in November. Really appreciate the time and enjoy the rest of the baseball season now that you have it.
Luke, thank you so much. I appreciate it.